The three gang members thought they'd picked an easy target when they cornered a teenage girl in an abandoned warehouse, and one of them had just slapped her hard across the face when her mother walked through the door. What they didn't know was that the quiet woman in jeans and a t-shirt calmly approaching them was Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, a Navy SEAL with 12 years of combat experience and a very particular set of skills, and in the next 3 minutes, all three men would be on their knees begging for mercy they absolutely did not deserve. If you love your mom and dad, hit that subscribe button and show some love. This story will give you chills. The city of San Diego had always been home to both military families and the darker elements that existed in any major metropolitan area, and sometimes those two worlds collided in ways that nobody could predict. On a warm September evening, 15-year-old Emma Chen was walking home from her after-school robotics club meeting at the community center, taking a shortcut through an industrial area that she'd used dozens of times before without incident. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Emma was focused on her phone, reviewing code for the competition her team was preparing for, completely unaware that three men had been following her for the past 2 blocks. Emma was a bright, ambitious teenager who took after her mother in both intelligence and determination. She had dark hair usually worn in a ponytail, her mother's Asian features combined with her father's height, giving her a lanky, athletic build that suggested she'd probably end up tall like her dad. She was wearing jeans, sneakers, and a hoodie from her school's robotics team, and she carried a backpack full of textbooks and electronics components. To the three men following her, she looked like an easy target, a distracted teenager with expensive electronics who probably had a wallet full of money and parents who would pay to get her back safely. The men were members of a local gang that operated in this part of the city, dealing drugs and running various criminal enterprises with the kind of casual violence that characterized their entire operation. The leader was a man named Marcus who went by the street name Razor, 28 years old with a record that included assault, robbery, and weapons charges. His two companions were younger members trying to prove themselves worthy of advancement in the organization, both in their early 20s and both eager to demonstrate their willingness to do whatever was asked of them. Marcus had noticed Emma walking alone and made the decision to grab her, figuring they could get her phone and wallet at minimum, and if she came from a wealthy family as her expensive backpack and new phone suggested, they might be able to get a ransom from her parents. It was an opportunistic crime, the kind of thing that happened when predators spotted prey that seemed vulnerable and decided to take advantage of the situation. They made their move as Emma passed an abandoned warehouse, one of several old industrial buildings in the area that had been empty for years while the city debated what to do with the property. Marcus moved quickly, grabbing Emma from behind and clamping a hand over her mouth before she could scream, while his two companions moved to block any escape routes. Emma's phone clattered to the ground as she was dragged backward into the warehouse through a broken side door, her backpack falling off her shoulders, and suddenly she was in a dark, dusty space that smelled of rust and decay. Marcus released his hand from Emma's mouth but grabbed her arm tightly, his grip painful enough to leave bruises. "Stay quiet and you won't get hurt," he said, his voice carrying the kind of casual menace that suggested he'd done this before. "Give me your phone and your wallet, and tell me your parents' phone number. We're going to call them and they're going to bring us some money if they want to see you again." Emma was terrified but trying to think clearly, her mind racing through possibilities. She dropped her phone outside, which meant they couldn't get into it without her passcode, but they had her backpack which had her wallet and ID. More importantly, she knew her mother would be looking for her soon because Emma was supposed to text when she left the community center, and she hadn't done that yet. Her mother Sarah was ex-military and had always emphasized situational awareness and having a plan, and right now Emma was trying to remember all those lessons while dealing with the fear threatening to overwhelm her thinking. "I don't have much money," Emma said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Maybe $40 in my wallet. My phone is outside somewhere. My parents aren't rich, they won't be able to pay you anything substantial." It was a reasonable attempt at de-escalating the situation, making herself seem less valuable as a target, but Marcus wasn't interested in reasonable negotiations. "We'll let them decide what you're worth," he said, nodding to one of his companions who was searching through Emma's backpack. The younger gang member pulled out her wallet, flipping it open to find her school ID and a small amount of cash. Emma Chen, he read from the ID. What do your parents do, Emma? Where do they work? Emma hesitated, knowing that telling them her mother was a Navy SEAL might make things worse or might make them reconsider the whole situation. My dad works in IT, she said, which was true. My mom works for the Navy. She left it vague, hoping they'd assume something like a desk job rather than special operations. Marcus grabbed Emma's chin roughly, forcing her to look at him. You're lying about something. I can tell. What does your mom really do? When Emma didn't answer immediately, Marcus slapped her hard across the face, the impact snapping her head to the side and bringing tears to her eyes. Answer me when I ask you a question. The slap had been hard enough to split Emma's lip, and she could taste blood in her mouth. The fear was overwhelming now, and she started crying, which only seemed to make Marcus angrier. She's a Navy SEAL, Emma finally said through her tears. She's a SEAL officer. But she's not going to pay you anything because that's not how she operates. You should let me go now before this gets worse for you. The three men laughed at that, finding it hilarious that this crying teenager was threatening them. Your mom's a SEAL. Marcus said mockingly. Like special forces? Sure she is. Even if that's true, what's she going to do? We've got you, not her. She'll pay up or she'll get you back in pieces. He raised his hand to slap Emma again, and that's when they all heard the voice from the darkness near the warehouse entrance. Step away from my daughter. Right now. The voice was calm and controlled, but carried an edge of absolute authority that made all three men freeze. Sarah Chen stepped into the dim light filtering through the warehouse's broken windows, and what the gang members saw was a woman in her late 30s, about 5'8", athletic build, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt, with her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She didn't look particularly threatening to men who were used to intimidating people through violence and numbers. Sarah had indeed been looking for Emma when her daughter failed to text on time. She'd driven to the community center and found it already locked up, then followed Emma's usual route home, her military training making her automatically scan for threats and anomalies. She'd found Emma's phone on the ground outside the warehouse, the screen cracked from the fall, and had immediately understood what had happened. Instead of calling the police and waiting for a response that might take precious minutes, Sarah had entered the warehouse alone, located her daughter and the three men holding her, and made the tactical assessment that she could handle this situation herself. Marcus looked at Sarah and saw a suburban mom who'd wandered into a situation way over her head. Lady, you need to leave right now. This doesn't concern you. Sarah's expression didn't change. I'm going to say this one more time. Step away from my daughter. Put your hands where I can see them. Get on your knees. Those are your only options that don't end with you in the hospital. The threat seemed absurd coming from a woman facing three men, and Marcus made a decision that he would regret for the rest of his life. He nodded to his two companions. Show this bitch what happens when she doesn't mind her business. The two younger gang members moved toward Sarah, one pulling a knife from his pocket, the other cracking his knuckles in anticipation of an easy fight. What happened next took less than 10 seconds but would be seared into Emma's memory forever. Sarah moved with a speed and precision that seemed almost superhuman to someone who'd never seen a highly trained special operations soldier in action. The first gang member, the one with the knife, lunged at her with an overhand stabbing motion that would have been effective against an untrained opponent. Sarah sidestepped the attack with minimal movement, grabbed his extended arm, and executed a perfect wrist lock that forced him to drop the knife while simultaneously sweeping his legs out from under him. He crashed to the concrete floor and Sarah drove her knee into his solar plexus, knocking the wind completely out of him and leaving him gasping and unable to move. The second gang member had barely processed what happened to his companion before Sarah was already pivoting toward him. He threw a wild haymaker punch that Sarah ducked under easily, and she responded with a devastating combination of strikes that her SEAL training had drilled into muscle memory over thousands of hours. A palm strike to his nose that broke it instantly and sent blood spraying across his face, an elbow to his temple that made his vision blur and his knees buckle, and a finishing kick to his knee that hyperextended the joint and dropped him to the ground screaming in pain. Marcus stood frozen, unable to process how this soccer mom had just destroyed two men in the time it took him to draw a breath. He still had his hand on Emma's arm, and he made the mistake of trying to use her as a shield, pulling her in front of him as he backed toward a different exit. "Stay back or I'll hurt her," he shouted, his voice betraying the fear he was trying to hide. Sarah's expression changed then, the professional detachment replaced by something cold and dangerous. "You already hurt her," she said quietly, her eyes fixed on the blood on Emma's lip and the red mark on her face where Marcus had slapped her. "You put your hands on my daughter. You terrorized a 15-year-old girl. And now you think threatening her is going to stop me from doing what I'm about to do to you?" She moved forward slowly, deliberately, and Marcus panicked. He shoved Emma toward her mother and ran for the exit, thinking he could escape while Sarah was catching her daughter. But Sarah caught Emma with one arm, verified she was okay with a quick glance, and then moved after Marcus with a speed that made it clear she'd been holding back before. Marcus made it about 15 feet before Sarah caught him, grabbing the back of his jacket and using his own momentum to slam him face-first into a concrete support pillar. The impact stunned him and he fell backward, blood streaming from his broken nose. Sarah was on him immediately, dropping her knee onto his chest and securing his arm in a position that made it very clear she could break it with minimal effort. "Please," Marcus gasped, the pain and terror finally breaking through his tough guy facade. "Please don't hurt me. I'm sorry. We weren't really going to hurt her, we just wanted money." Sarah's expression showed exactly what she thought of his excuses. "You slapped my 15-year-old daughter hard enough to split her lip. You terrorized her. You grabbed her off the street and dragged her into this warehouse. You don't get to claim you weren't going to hurt her when you already did." She applied a small amount of pressure to his trapped arm and Marcus screamed. "I'm sorry. Please. I'm sorry." The two other gang members were still on the ground where Sarah had left them, one still struggling to breathe, the other clutching his destroyed knee and crying. Sarah looked at all three of them, these predators who thought they were tough until they encountered someone who actually knew what violence looked like. "Here's what's going to happen," Sarah said, her voice calm and professional again. "You're going to stay exactly where you are until the police arrive. You're going to confess to attempted kidnapping, assault, and whatever other charges they want to file. And you're going to remember this moment for the rest of your lives, remember what happens when you prey on someone's daughter." She pulled out her phone and called 911, reporting the attempted kidnapping and requesting police response, while keeping Marcus pinned beneath her knee. The police arrived within minutes, finding a scene that seemed surreal, a woman in casual clothes holding three gang members incapacitated, one of whom was begging for mercy while the others were too injured to speak. Emma was sitting safely to the side, shaken but physically okay except for the split lip. The responding officers recognized Sarah from her work liaising with local law enforcement on security matters, and they quickly understood what had happened. The three gang members were arrested and charged with attempted kidnapping, assault, robbery, and various other offenses. Their injuries required medical treatment before they could be booked into jail, with one needing surgery on his shattered knee. Marcus had a broken nose, broken ribs from Sarah's knee, and a separated shoulder from the arm lock. The other had a broken nose and severe concussion. All three would eventually plead guilty rather than face a trial where their complete humiliation at the hands of one woman would be documented in detail. Emma was taken to the hospital to be checked out, with Sarah staying by her side the entire time. The physical injuries were minor, just the split lip and some bruising, but Sarah knew the psychological impact would last longer. They talked about what happened, about the fear Emma had felt, about how proud Sarah was of her daughter for trying to keep calm and think strategically even in a terrifying situation. "I was so scared," Emma admitted, tears flowing freely now that the adrenaline was wearing off. "I thought they were going to really hurt me. I thought." She couldn't finish the sentence. Sarah pulled her daughter close, feeling the rage return as she thought about what these men had put Emma through, what they'd been planning to do. "You did everything right," Sarah said softly. "You stayed calm, you didn't escalate the situation, you tried to de-escalate. Those were all the right choices. What happened to you wasn't your fault. Those men made choices to be predators, to hurt people, to take advantage of someone they thought was vulnerable. That's on them, not on you." Over the following weeks and months, Sarah made sure Emma had access to counseling to process the trauma of what had happened. They talked about the incident, about Emma's fears, about the nightmares that came sometimes. Sarah shared some of her own experiences dealing with traumatic situations, the techniques she'd learned for managing fear and processing difficult experiences. She made sure Emma knew that what she was feeling was normal and valid, that healing took time, and that being scared didn't make her weak. The incident also brought Emma's robotics team together in support. When her teammates learned what had happened, they rallied around her, visiting her at home, making sure she knew she wasn't alone. The team dedicated their competition season to Emma, and when they won the regional championship several months later, they gave her the trophy, saying her strength and courage had inspired them all. Sarah also used the incident as a teaching opportunity with other military families on the base, talking about situational awareness, about teaching children to trust their instincts, about the importance of check-in protocols so you know when something is wrong. The story spread through the military community, not as a tale of revenge or violence, but as a reminder that protecting your family sometimes meant being prepared to act decisively when they were threatened. The 3 gang members who'd attacked Emma all received significant prison sentences. Marcus got 15 years for his role as the leader and for the assault on Emma. His 2 companions got 8 and 10 years respectively, with additional time for their prior criminal records. They would have years in prison to reflect on their choices and on the fact that they'd picked the wrong target when they grabbed Emma Chin off the street. For Sarah, the incident reinforced why she trained so hard throughout her military career, why she pushed herself through SEAL qualification and years of combat deployments. The skills she developed weren't just about military operations or national security, they were about being able to protect the people she loved when they needed her most. She'd spent her career learning to neutralize threats efficiently and effectively, and when 3 predators had threatened her daughter, those skills had made the difference between a tragedy and a rescue. Emma gradually recovered from the psychological trauma of the attack, with the healing process supported by her family, her counseling, and the passage of time. The incident changed her in some ways, making her more cautious and more aware of her surroundings, but it didn't break her spirit or stop her from pursuing her goals. She continued with robotics, eventually earning a full scholarship to MIT where she studied engineering. She never forgot what her mother had done for her that day, the swift and decisive action that had saved her from whatever those men had been planning. Years later, Emma would tell the story to her own children, about the time she was grabbed off the street by gang members and how her mother had appeared like an avenging angel and made grown men beg for mercy. She'd tell them about the importance of having people in your life who would fight for you when you couldn't fight for yourself, about the value of skills and training that could make the difference in a crisis, and about how love sometimes looked like a Navy SEAL mother calmly and efficiently neutralizing threats to her daughter. For Sarah, that evening in the warehouse became just another chapter in a life of service and protection. She'd spent years protecting her country and her fellow service members in combat zones around the world, and when it mattered most, she'd been able to protect her daughter in a warehouse in San Diego. The 3 men who'd thought they were predators had learned that there were consequences for their choices, that not every victim was helpless, and that some mothers were Navy SEALs who would absolutely destroy anyone who threatened their children. They'd started the encounter thinking they were in control, thinking they had power over a frightened teenage girl. They'd ended it on their knees begging for mercy, learning in the hardest way possible that they'd made a terrible mistake. So that's the powerful story of Sarah Chen, the Navy SEAL mother who turned 3 predators into 3 prisoners begging for mercy in less than 3 minutes. Her training had prepared her for combat halfway around the world, but when her daughter needed her most, those same skills made all the difference. It's a reminder that evil exists, that predators walk among us, but also that there are protectors, skilled warriors who will stand between the innocent and those who would do them harm. Now we want to hear from you. Which part of the country are you watching this video from? Drop your state or city in the comments below. And if this story showed you the power of a parent's love combined with elite training, if it reminded you why we should never underestimate quiet strength, then hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more incredible stories of courage, protection, and people who stood up when it mattered most. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.